Hey everyone, welcome back to the podcast. Today I'm speaking to Anna Bertoldini. I'm really excited for this conversation to go live, not only because it's a topic I'm personally passionate about, but because I've been following Anna for the last couple of years and her content specifically has been really impactful on my own journey with building a personal brand on LinkedIn. If you don't know Anna, she's built over 30,000 followers on LinkedIn. She's had senior roles in both employer brand and company brand at businesses like Nielsen IQ, Glovo, and BlackRock. She's also got her own coaching business where she helps people build their personal brands. That's exactly what we talk about in this episode. So how you can get started posting content. Once you've started posting regularly, how you can really grow your brand. We focus specifically on how employees can grow a personal brand while working for a company. And we focus on how to grow your profile on LinkedIn. I guarantee no matter who you are, there's at least one key takeaway for growing your personal brand in this episode. I hope you enjoy it. Let's dive in. Anna, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. Excited to be here.
So today we're going to be talking all about building personal brand. I want to spend as much of the time as we can getting into practical, tactical things. Before we get there, though, I think it's important to intro you a little bit further. So to ask a direct question, give me your credentials. Why should we listen to you on personal branding?
Okay, that's an amazing question. So, hi everyone, I'm Anna Bertoldini, and I'm the Senior Social Media Brand Manager at Nielsen IQ. I'm in charge of amplifying our global brand story across social media. That includes employee and leadership advocacy, large-scale social media campaigns, and essentially crafting our brand communications for social. And that's my 9 to 5. And then my 5 to 9 is I'm a personal brand coach and consultant. So what I do is I help people find their unique voice and build their brands on LinkedIn to land their next big opportunity and turn their LinkedIn views into opportunities. So I've been doing this for a while now, helping people build their brands both from an in-house company perspective within our organization. I've been doing employee advocacy for a while, both in my employer brand role for over 7 years, but also in my newer brand marketing role, and also building my own brand on LinkedIn, reaching 30,000 plus followers, and also having a pretty engaged community.
Awesome. Preparing for this podcast was really hard because there were so many avenues we could have gone down. We could have spoke about the employer brand. We could have spoke about the company brand. We decided to laser in on personal brands. I'd love to ask, as an employee working for a company, why should I care about building a personal brand for myself?
Yeah, and that's such a great question. There are a lot of people who are on the fence about building a brand, and I totally understand why. It can be quite daunting at the beginning to build a brand, but it yields a lot of benefits. So all the effort that you put in really does result in a lot of great benefits overall. So the first one would be essentially professional growth. So it can really help you grow your career, both from learning from other people online, sharing content yourself and having people comment on it, and really learning yourself as you share your knowledge. I think that's the best way of learning is when you acquire something new and you learn something new, learning how to actually explain that to other people helps you get better at it yourself. And on top of that, also visibility, right? When you start putting yourself out there and sharing what you know and adding value, you're more visible to people outside of your organization, but also within the organization. So you get noticed. And that can really help open doors for you as an employee. You can position yourself as an industry expert, and that really helps with your own reputation, and you carry that around with you for the rest of your career because your personal brand is yours. It's not the company's, it's your own, and you carry that with you wherever you go. And it helps you network. So it really helps you meet other people within your field, learn from them, and really be an engaged member of the LinkedIn community, which can really help you in the long run in growing your own career, finding a new job, whatever it is that you're looking to do, or maybe even start your own business. And the final thing that I think personal branding really helps employees with, but really anyone, is to overcome common issues like imposter syndrome, for example. That was something that I really felt for a while. And as I started posting and getting great feedback from people, I started building my own confidence in my knowledge and expertise. So that can really help with imposter syndrome too.
I completely agree with all the points. I started on my personal brand when I started my business. My biggest regret is that I didn't start sooner. I really wish I did it when I was still working for companies. I think the point you made on opening opportunities for you, like you almost become a magnet for more opportunities to come into your sphere, which like as an employee with your career and moving to new companies makes complete sense also, as it does for a business owner. Let's go through the journey of becoming a creator then, or starting to post content. And before you even start, particularly as an employee, you might be quite nervous about what your company may think, or, you know, if you're even allowed to post content. So how do you advise people on that topic?
Yeah, and this is a question that I get a lot from corporate professionals, because it can be scary to start posting, not just for your own fears of putting yourself out there, but also of saying something that goes against the company policy in some way. And so my first tip whenever someone asks me about that is to actually go and look up your company's social media policy. There you can get a better sense of the guidelines, what's encouraged, what's restricted. Generally, companies do have a social media policy depending on how big or small they are. And you can build your personal brand safely by checking that out. So especially when your content aligns with your company's values, industry, and expertise. The second thing I would really recommend doing is to really shift the perspective, is to focus more on adding value to your community through your content, as opposed to, self-promotion. And in the end, personal branding is never about self-promotion, it's about adding value to others. But when you frame your content as being useful and helpful for other people, that can really position you as a thought leader, and many organizations value thought leaders among their employees. So the organization will actually benefit from you posting when you do so in this manner, as opposed to being self-serving and talking about yourself. The other thing I would really recommend is to be mindful of your content. So don't post sensitive information. Don't post proprietary company content. Make sure to double check in case you have any doubts with your social media team, with your legal team, to make sure that you're not posting anything that is sensitive information. So that's something I would really recommend. Numbers, company like rules, or company sort of information or client information, right, that could be sensitive. Always make sure to double check if you have any doubt. So those are some of the recommendations that I have. And finally, if you're unsure if your company has a social media policy, or in general you find that there's some sort of restriction, talk to your manager about it and make sure that your manager is okay and on board, or talk to your social media or legal teams if you want to find the right resources or want to get some quick answers. I think this is kind of like the starting point if you want to get started and are unsure about how the company thinks about it.
Awesome. So you've gone through that. You feel confident that the company is happy with you creating content. How do I then decide what to post about, and I guess finding my voice on LinkedIn or other social medias?
So that's a great question too. I would really start by experimenting. Sometimes it takes a bit of work and a bit of time to really find your niche authority, so the topic that you want to be mainly associated with. Sometimes you have many interests or many things that you're passionate about, essentially. So I would start experimenting. You can talk about career lessons, challenges, industry insights, or even light personal anecdotes, for example. That's something that I like to do, is kind of do a mix of authority building. So content that speaks to what I'm an expert in. So brand marketing, employee advocacy, personal branding, right? Brand communications. And then I also do some storytelling. And this is where I add personal anecdotes. I talk about myself, any challenge that I've overcome, how I did it. And this can really help people get to know your expertise, but also you as a person, because many people follow creators because of that creator themselves, right? Who they are, how they speak, not just the content that they post. It's the person that matters. So be authentic, write as if you're speaking to a friend, and test out what works. Look for patterns. See what resonates with your specific audience. Check out your likes, your comments, the DMs, and double down on what feels natural and works. Look at those two things. And also be realistic. Don't try to copy other people who you see are successful on LinkedIn. If that tone isn't for you, don't force it. So always be yourself and find what works and what feels most natural to you. And then once you do find your tone, right, your story, and you start kind of building momentum, that's where I would really start engaging with others. So you want to follow creators in your field, you want to engage with their content, you want to find other peers that, share your same interests and start engaging with them. Comment on their post, share your insights, add your perspective, and really build your authority through the comments on other people's pages. Because that way you show up a lot more often than simply sharing content. Because if you only rely on sharing content, you post maybe once a day, and that's the only time that you show up. But if you comment on other people's posts, then you show up on multiple places, multiple times a day. And so that's a great way to build your brand too, without directly posting all the time. And also experiment with different formats, find what works for you. So for example, I love written content and pictures. I'm working on video right now. I would love to get better at video, but find what you're most natural at and what you're good at and what you can stick to consistently, right? It's all about consistency too, and really stick to that schedule. So once you find your story, you start engaging with others, you build your brand, stick to that consistently and keep going. And that's the best way to build your audience and community.
I think the comments call out is a great one for a number of reasons. Firstly, realistically, when you first start posting, you're not going to get tons of views on your posts. It takes quite a while on LinkedIn to build that up, right? But if you're leaving valuable comments on a top creator's post, then tens of thousands of people already, that is your content. The comment is your content that people are seeing. And I think it also be good to get your view on this, but I think it also puts you in the content mindset. Like it can be a good way to start creating is just through the comments. Like you're getting involved with other people's content, you're adding your own unique perspective on it. Like that can be a nice way to start being a creator.
Absolutely. It's all about, sharing what you know, weighing in on trending topics, positioning yourself as an industry expert, but also distinguishing yourself. And it's really hard to distinguish yourself in a sea of people who are doing exactly the same thing. So really sticking to your tone and unique personality is going to help you here. And that's really the only way to distinguish yourself is by creating content that's unique to you and your brand.
On the storytelling piece, what would you say to someone who maybe is less comfortable talking about themselves? And I'll definitely throw myself in this category. I've been creating content quite aggressively on LinkedIn for the last couple of years, but a lot of what I share is maybe what I've learned from others or insights that aren't necessarily my own. One of my goals for this year is to start telling more stories and start sharing more about myself. How would you advise me to do that?
Yeah, that's an interesting question because I've seen you, by the way, on LinkedIn. I think you're doing great work. You're focusing a lot on authority building, right? So being an industry expert, and that really helps you, right, with your own brand, your product, right, and positioning yourself as someone who knows the field quite well. Maybe it's important to also let people get to know you, and I think this is what I would add to that. The storytelling part that I mentioned about, sharing a bit more about your personal journey can really help. It adds an element of connection that people can feel and relate to when they see your content. So, for storytelling, it's really about following a structure, right, with your content. It's about adding that hook. So starting with that intriguing statement or question, right, having that challenge. So that that middle part, a struggle, like an insight or a turning point, and then finally the resolution. And this is where you kind of share what you learned from a situation, so how you solved it, the impact that it had, and essentially what you came out with. And you can frame pretty much anything with this sort of structure. But when you talk about yourself, I would really add in some elements of what makes you passionate about what you do and how you got to where you are, some personal challenges that you've encountered in your life that you've overcome in a certain way that others can learn from. And I would show and not tell, right? So use vivid descriptions and emotions to bring the story to life. Instead of saying I felt anxious, talk about the situation that made you feel anxious and keep it always relatable. And when people feel like they can relate to you and your problems and your thoughts, right? And your concerns, those stories, your audience can see themselves in. So you can always kind of create that connection with people by sharing a vulnerable situation or thought, and then tie it always to a takeaway. So once again, adding that value, right? It's not just talking about yourself and the challenge you overcome and how successful you were. It's always about that takeaway. So leave your audience with something, an insight, a lesson, or even just a laugh, because it can be something that doesn't just educate them. It can also inspire them or motivate them. So you can talk a bit about yourself, but as long as you're adding some value to the audience, that's important. Your content should always aim to educate, entertain, or inspire. So you can share a mix of authority building, maybe like some entertaining content, some fun information about you, some memes, talk about your authority subject with like fun content essentially, or inspire people. And that's where the stories come in, where you talk about yourself and what you've overcome, and that can inspire others to do the same.
Block the next hour out after this podcast to write some new posts. Promise this isn't just a personal session for me. Like, I think that's something that a lot of other people struggle with. Are there any other common mistakes or common areas where in your coaching you see people maybe going a little bit wrong once they've started posting regularly?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So one of the most popular things is the initial buzz you get after a coaching session where you start posting content and eventually you kind of stop. like what happens after January 1st, where you say, I'm going to go to the gym and get back in shape, right? And then after January, February comes and you already start to lose motivation. It's really about building up that discipline and consistency with creating content. That's probably the most common issue that I find. The other one is feeling like you have nothing to say. So like starting off maybe with a couple pieces of content and maybe losing confidence because you feel like you're not getting enough engagement or likes, but it's a long-term game. It's something that you need to keep doing for months to come, years to come, to really see the results of. I started seeing many of the results of my work after at least a year. So it's not something that happens overnight. You don't become a famous LinkedIn influencer or overnight sensation simply by posting one piece of content. Even if it does go viral, like you have to build it up. And it takes a consistent effort, creativity, and time. So that's something I would really drill down in this session, is that it's something you have to commit to once you start. It's not like you post once and then you leave and then, you get back on the horse after like 3 months. So those are the common mistakes.
One thing I've done recently, which I'm struggling to communicate because it goes against things I've probably believed in the past, but I built myself a personal mission statement, and it's on the wall, like behind my desk, and it's kind of like the main reason behind why I'm doing what I'm doing with my business, but also my content. And I'm thinking that is really going to help me, like when, exactly as you said, sometimes you're super motivated to post, your posts are doing well, you're loving creating content, you have so many ideas, and then sometimes it feels like a drag or your posts aren't performing well. I feel like if I had this, it's going to remind me to at least post consistently throughout the year. So we'll see how that goes.
I love that you have that. I think that's so important to look at that and see that as like your North Star that guides everything that you're doing. I always recommend that people have 3 of those statements, right? So they have their mission statement, like why they do what they do. They have their introduction, so how you introduce yourself when you go and you meet people, right? Always say your name and last name and really like who you are and what you have to offer. And then your elevator pitch. The difference between introduction and elevator pitch is that the elevator pitch is essentially guiding people to action. So it's who you are, what you offer, and what people can get out of it, right? So why should people buy from you, work with you, hire you, whatever it is? So it inspires action. Whereas the introduction is essentially like kind of like an icebreaker, right? It says something about you and it inspires a discussion. So it's something that you would use when you want to network with people, but not necessarily get them to buy or work with you. I think those 3 statements are really important to have. But definitely the mission statement is something you want to keep close by every time you start to lose a bit of motivation.
That's awesome. I'm also going to add those 2 to that. I've got plenty of space on the wall, so they'll be up there too. Let's finish off. We have a number of recruiters or talent professionals specifically who listen to this episode. Is there any specific advice you'd give them in their sector when they're looking to build a personal brand?
Yeah, absolutely. So I always say that probably the 3 groups that benefit the most from personal branding are, well, business owners, because you're essentially selling yourself, right? And your business, you are the face of it. Salespeople, because you're selling a product and you're essentially networking for a living. And that's really part of your job, is to share content, educate people, and get people to buy from you. And also recruiters, because you're essentially salespeople as well. So you want to build relationships with candidates. You want to be a credible industry expert so that when you message people, candidates are more likely and prospects are more likely to answer you because you have that brand. So personal branding can benefit recruiters so much. in both their personal journeys, right, and in growing their own brand for the sake of growing their personal brand, but also in their work when they're doing their job. So my tips are the same for recruiters as they are for anyone else looking to grow their brand. But to grow kind of your industry expertise, I would really focus on showing that expertise. So share tips for job seekers like resume hacks or LinkedIn optimized interview preparation, or trends in hiring, such as skill gaps or like industry demands. Like, what is it that you know that maybe candidates don't know that you can share to give them some insight? Then you can humanize the process. So maybe you can talk about real stories with permission or removing names with successes, challenges, or memorable candidates that you've helped that can help other candidates be inspired or connect to their stories. You can also be transparent and share data so you can demystify the hiring process by kind of sharing how it works and giving some tips. Or if you have any industry trends and stats that you want to share, that's interesting too for the authority building piece. So you want to really establish that credibility by sharing what you know about your job and also highlighting your own career path and why you love helping people find opportunities. It makes you more relatable. It demystifies the candidate experience and hiring process, which can be kind of scary for candidates. So they see you as a person that they can trust and they can listen to and confide in, and they're more likely to answer you. But also you grow your own brand in the meantime. So you're helping people trust you, and also you're building your own brand and getting better at your job in the process.
I think the way you framed it there is great. One common thing I hear is maybe, let's say I'm a sales recruiter and maybe I don't feel confident in posting about sales because I don't work in sales. So these people know way more about sales than I do. But how you positioned it there is actually you're the expert in hiring salespeople. So you can help these people with their career and help them get another job. So there's loads of value you can provide to them.
Absolutely. I mean, there's so much experience and you're talking to people all day, every day. So you probably have a lot of stories and anecdotes that you can pull from and that you can share on LinkedIn in the form of content. And it can be like from a sales perspective, if you're recruiting for sales, it can be like popular questions that, interviewers may ask in those interviews with salespeople specifically. You can really adapt it to whoever you're speaking to the most. As long as you find your niche and you find the right audience for your content, and kind of like you establish sort of your authority in that space, then you can sort of speak to a specific subject.
Awesome. Hopefully everyone listening has at least one thing they can take away and apply on their LinkedIn posts or profile today. Anna, it's been a pleasure. Anyone listening also who isn't following you definitely should. We'll leave your LinkedIn link below. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a real pleasure. Thank you, Joe.